In the winter campaigns of World War II, soldiers didn't always have the luxury of standard-issue sleeping bags or heated shelters. Many were deployed in frozen forests, snow-covered fields and muddy foxholes with temperatures plummeting far below zero. The bitter truth was simple. Whoever could manage warmth would survive. Whoever couldn't, wouldn't. Yet, out of that brutal reality came a method so effective that even modern cold-weather survival experts still study it. It wasn't high-tech. It didn't require new materials. It was a layering system and insulation method so precise that men could sleep directly on frozen ground and wake up alive. This method, often referred to by veterans as the ground barrier trick, is still one of the most efficient ways to conserve body heat without modern gear. It emerged first on the Eastern Front, where frostbite claimed more lives than gunfire, and then spread through Allied units fighting in the Ardennes and Scandinavia. What's remarkable is that this method, born out of desperation and necessity, still outperforms many modern sleeping systems if applied correctly. The real enemy wasn't the cold air. It was the frozen ground beneath. Soldiers quickly learned that the greatest heat loss didn't come from the air above them, but from the ground below. Frozen soil, snow, or ice absorbed body heat like a sponge. Lying on bare earth, even wrapped in wool, was fatal within hours. The first adaptation came from Soviet and Finnish troops who built what they called dry nests. Instead of lying directly on snow, they layered spruce boughs, hay, or even straw between themselves and the ground. German mountain troops soon adopted similar tactics, carrying thin sheets of burlap and forage material to form makeshift insulation layers. In some units, soldiers filled sandbags with dry leaves or spare clothing to serve as heat barriers. This layering created a trapped air cushion beneath the body, drastically reducing conductive heat loss. Modern survivalists can still apply this principle. When sleeping outdoors, the key is to create separation between your body and the earth. Even just a few inches of natural insulation, like pine needles, cardboard, leaves, or even some spare clothing, can really prevent the body from losing its warmth into the soil. It's, well, the same principle behind insulated sleeping pads today, just achieved with raw field materials. Layering clothing was honestly a science, not just luck. World War II soldiers didn't have moisture-wicking fabrics or synthetic thermals, you know. Their survival depended on understanding how to layer natural materials. Wool, in particular, was prized because it retained heat even when damp. A soldier's success in staying warm came down to three main clothing layers: a base to trap warmth, a middle to absorb moisture, and an outer shell to block wind. Those stationed in the Alps or on the Eastern Front used newspaper straw or even dried moss between layers of clothing to add insulation. Reports from Finnish ski troops mention men wrapping their legs in parchment paper or even tree bark to block moisture from snow. It sounds primitive, but the science holds up. Each extra layer of trapped air acts as a thermal barrier. For a modern equivalent, One can replicate this method during outdoor emergencies by focusing on breathability and layering density. The goal is to trap heat without trapping moisture. Cotton, for instance, becomes a death trap when wet, but wool or fleece maintains its thermal properties. Sleeping directly on cold ground was suicide, but sleeping elevated wasn't always possible. Soldiers improvised trench beds, compact setups built from scavenged material. They started by digging out a small depression in the ground, filling it with dry brush, straw, or even spare uniforms. Then they'd place a waterproof layer on top, usually a tarp oilcloth or poncho. Over that went a wool blanket or coat, and finally they wrapped themselves inside a secondary covering, often another poncho or tent section. The outer layer served as a vapour barrier, keeping warmth in and wind out. Soldiers who followed this system could sleep in sub-zero temperatures with minimal frostbite. Those who didn't often didn't make it through the night. This trick can still be used today in survival settings. Dig a shallow trench, create a dry base layer and cover yourself with 2 layers of insulation, one beneath and one above. A plastic sheet, even a trash bag, can serve as a vapour barrier to trap heat. The logic hasn't changed in 80 years. Warmth is built, not worn. What many folks forget is that soldiers were in constant motion during the day, but, well, almost motionless at night. That meant their bodies went from high exertion to complete stillness in freezing air. The sudden shift caused sweating to freeze beneath their uniforms, leading to, catastrophic heat loss. The trick, according to veteran manuals, was to change into a dry layer before bedding down. Men who carried extra socks or undershirts reserved them exclusively for sleeping. Even if they had to wear damp outer layers, keeping the inner layer dry preserved core temperature. Fires were often forbidden to avoid detection, so body heat had to be conserved, not generated. For modern campers or survivalists, this concept is still vital. Before resting, remove damp clothing, air it out, and wear a dry base. The difference between mild shivering and hypothermia can come down to moisture management, a lesson taught not by textbooks, but by soldiers who fought to stay alive through the night. Sleeping bags were rare on the front lines, and when they existed, they froze stiff from condensation. Instead, soldiers developed a wrap system. They laid one blanket under the body, one over, and used belts or straps to secure the edges, sealing in warmth. In wet regions, they inserted a poncho or canvas sheet between layers to stop ground moisture. This wrap created what engineers later called a microclimate, a pocket of stable, humid warmth maintained by the soldier's own body heat. When combined with a dry base and a wind barrier, it performed as effectively as modern Arctic-rated sleeping bags. To replicate this, survivalists can use 2 blankets and a tarp. Lay one blanket down, then the tarp, then another blanket on top. Crawl inside and fold the sides under. This creates a sealed thermal cocoon that blocks both wind and moisture, mirroring the Second World War method that kept men alive on frozen ground. The World War II soldiers' fight against the cold wasn't just about sheer endurance, it was really about adaptation. They learned, often the hard way, to respect the environment and to work with its resources, rather than against them. What these soldiers developed in trenches, forests and mountains actually became the foundation of modern cold-weather survival science. The methods that saved lives back then still apply to modern preppers, campers and explorers today. Insulate the ground layer, your clothing wisely, stay dry and use your own heat efficiently. Survival, in truth, wasn't about having expensive gear. It was about understanding how the body and nature interact with each other. To uncover even more forgotten field tactics and wartime ingenuity that still outsmart modern technology, subscribe to Relic Logic. Go ahead and share this with those who believe survival comes from knowledge, not just equipment. The secrets that kept soldiers alive in frozen trenches still have lessons for anyone who refuses to freeze when the world turns cold.